The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this December 16th. Getting closer and closer to Christmas. Hope everybody is having a great day, great week. All right, where to begin today? So this is the season of this is Christmas season. It's a season of celebration and goodwill. Jews celebrate Hanukkah, Christians and secularists celebrate Christmas. But there's one group out there that wants to disrupt all that because they harbor a deep hatred of Western civilization and everything it represents. And that group is Islamists, Islamic fascists, however you want to call them. Just this week, they have Polish authorities have stopped an ISIS-inspired attack on a Christmas market. German authorities stopped an Islamist plot to attack a Christian market. And indeed, a number of Christian markets in Germany have been taken over by large crowds of Muslims chanting for Sharia law. U.S. authorities arrested anti-Israel suspects planning a New Year's Eve bombings, a series of bombings actually, in California. In Amsterdam, there were big demonstrations against a concert being held at the Amsterdam Concertgebouw or something like that, however you pronounce it, where it was a Hanukkah celebration and there was a singer from Israel, a religious singer from Israel who has videos online of singing with soldiers and might have even served in the Israeli military. And that was so ridiculous, so absurd, so horrific to the crowd that they demonstrated. They tried to shut down the event. The event was initially canceled, and then a small event was created. Part of the demonstrations, you could hear shouts of "Kill the Jews." Now this is not just Islamists. This is, in this case, leftist haters of Western civilization. And of course, we know what happened on Sunday at Bondi. It's not Bondi, it's Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, where 16 people celebrating Hanukkah at the beach were slaughtered by a couple of Islamic terrorists. So Islam, militant Islam, radical Islam, Islamism, jihadism, again, however you want to call it, is exerting its influence throughout. And the response of most people is kind of the response to October 7th and kind of the response to the war between Israel and Hamas and in Gaza. The response in most of the world is to blame the Jews. That is, there's no big uprising and really people getting upset at the fact that, Muslims are engaging in acts of violence against Jews and Christians. There's no great upset at the fact that Muslims are really trying to dominate and take over the political landscape in places like Europe. There's no huge upset at the fact that Muslims are slaughtering Jews in Sydney, Australia. No, but I posted something today on Israel on my Twitter feed, and oh my God, just unbelievable. And I've told you this before, that I get these anti-Semitic things, but it just keeps getting worse. And the numbers, just the numbers, are stunning in terms of the number of people with the most vile commentary. Why does Zionists spew that, lies? That painter an Austrian painter had it right, a reference to Hitler. Israel is trying to silence the world in regard to the genocide they have committed. And you just keep going on and on and on in terms of, me personally, it's time to kick me out of the United States. It's time to send me back to Israel. Some of the most disgusting, ugly, horrific memes that people are posting. Really, really despicable. Posting photos of mangled bodies of civilian and children dead in Gaza. And of course everything is Israel's fault. Basically the whole thing is Israel's fault. And you see that over and over again. I mean, there's even somebody today on Mario Nafal, who is like the news guy at Twitter, interviewing an Iranian American professor who basically is suggesting now that maybe, it's quite possible, I'm just asking questions, maybe the Bondi massacre was an inside job by the Mossad. Maybe it was a false flag alert. Indeed, that's what happened with 9/11, after all, he says. He says, I wouldn't put it beyond Mossad and the Israeli regime. On October 7th, when Hamas was taking the prisoner hostages back to Gaza, we know that the Israeli regime carried out the Hannibal Directive, and it did not admit this. It killed large numbers of its own people, supposedly. And then he says, regardless of who was behind 9/11, someone sold their stocks right before the attack in the United States. Never said who sold the stocks, right? We never said who did it. Couldn't have been Bin Laden, right? The regime that carries out genocide, a regime that bombs hospitals, a regime that pulls the plugs on incubators and murders tiny infants, it can do anything. And this is a common sentiment out there. This is not unusual. This is not wacky anymore. This is not some crazies at the margin. This is everywhere. I mean, on the BBC, after the Bondi attack, Nick Robinson, one of the commentators on BBC, asked listeners of the BBC to imagine the impact this is going to have on Muslims. They're worried about Muslims. Dale Vance, another commentator on BBC, blamed Israel for the massacre of the Jews. It's insane. It truly is insane. The level of anti-Semitism, the level of hatred of Jews, is I've never seen anything like it. I don't think it's existed at this level really since the Holocaust, since World War II, or since before the World War II. And it's getting worse. And there are very few defenders out there. And it places me in this weird situation. So this is me personally. It places me in this weird situation because I do not consider myself on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis, I do not consider myself a Jew. I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. I reject the teaching of Judaism, just as I reject the teaching of Christianity and I reject the teaching of Islam. I am not Jewish. I do not celebrate the Jewish holidays. I don't celebrate any of them. I celebrate Christmas and Thanksgiving. Those are my holidays. And the 4th of July. Those are the 3 holidays I celebrate. In no respect, I didn't raise my kids to be Jewish. My kids don't know what it means to be Jewish. They don't know Jewish holidays. they have no sense of what it means. I left Israel partially because I don't feel like, don't think of myself as a Jew in any meaningful sense. Everybody knows I'm from a Jewish background because they see my name or they know something about me and they just make an assumption. So I'm attacked as a Jew constantly on Twitter. I mean, constantly. And, it's bizarre, weird, sad, pathetic, annoying to be in this situation. But I really do accept kind of Ayn Rand's perspective on this, or at least as told by somebody who worked for Ayn Rand, that Ayn Rand once said that she was only considered herself a Jew in the face of anti-Semitism. And right now, I'm willing to fight for the Jews. Not because I'm any more of a Jew than I was yesterday, but because the injustice here is just so horrific. I mean, I'm a huge critic of so much that is Jewish. I find the ultra-Orthodox Jews that they back clothes and all this stuff and who refuse to go serve in the military, I find them despicable and horrible and offensive, and I really despise them. And yet now I find myself somehow on their side defending Jews because of the injustice of it, and because I am lumped in with them whether I like it or not, whether I want to or not, whether I would deny it or not, whether I reject it or not. And it seems cowardly in the face of anti-Semitism to say, no, I'm not a Jew. No, in the face of anti-Semitism, I am a Jew. Come. Say that to my face. It really is. It's the emotionally very strange and difficult to know, kind of to know how to deal with it intellectually. I get what's going on, and all the anti-Semites are achieving with regard to me is making me just more furious and more committed to the fight against them, and to bringing out the truth and to articulating the truth. Bring it on is exactly the attitude, but, it can't win if they really bring it on. There are a lot more of them than there are of me. I know exactly what bringing it on ultimately means. Bringing it on ultimately means, what happened during World War II. Now, as I've said, and I will continue to say, this is why Israel exists. This is why it was created. This is why it should continue to exist. So that if it is brought on, there is a way, there's somewhere one can escape to. I don't want to go back to Israel. But I can imagine, I don't want to imagine, a situation where I have to. And the just the horror of the horror of the Western world. I almost said civilization, but in this regard, they're not being civilized. The horror of the Western world just accepting the Islamic story, accepting what Hamas tells it. And by the way, the anti-Semitic stuff that I get, I can't tell. Some of it is clearly leftist, the globalizing intifada leftist. But a lot of it is right-wing, Groiper, new right, alt-right kind of stuff. It's hard to separate them these days. They look almost the same. So here's the West, not paying any attention, not caring, shrugging. about the ever-growing power of Islam within the West and the ever-growing power of uncivilized Islam, Islam as an uncivilizing force in the West, not insisting they assimilate, not insisting on the rule of law when it applies to them. Indeed, if you saw in the Bondi attack, you saw the police hang back a little bit and not really engage. Well, part of that is their training not to really interfere, not to stop the Islamists. Now, of course, when they're shooting, my guess is they were told they're supposed to interfere, but if the training is generally, don't offend the Muslims, don't offend the Muslims, but that's what most of the West seems to be concerned about, not offending the Muslims. Or what you get on the right is, yeah, let's offend the Muslims, but let's take down the Jews at the same time. While we're at it, why not? I mean, you can see that in Fuentes and Tucker and these guys. They're not concerned about Islam. They're not concerned at all about Islam. Indeed, Tucker's best friends are the funders of the Islamist movements all over the West. I mean, Candace Owen, Tucker Carlson, they're not doing show after show showing the conspiracy behind, and here's a real conspiracy, behind the Muslim Brotherhood funding mosques, funding, Quran study groups, funding radicalized movements all over Europe and all over the United States within the Muslim community, and how that is leading to violence, and how that is targeted at imposing Sharia law in the entire West. They don't do any shows about that. But the idea that the Jews control the world, that the idea that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk, the idea that the Jews are behind anything negative that happens in the world, that they have devoted themselves fully and completely in their life. And I would say that they're just a marginal group, and to some extent they still are just a marginal group. But if you look at poll after poll among young people, that is the future of this country, their attitudes are not that marginal. Their attitudes are not that marginal. And at the end of the day, the attitudes are not that different than what is going on at the White House. Now, I don't think that Trump is particularly anti-Semitic, although, who knows what he is in any given moment. He might be something different. But let's be clear, Trump is no friend of Israel. He is no friend of Israel, in spite of the Israelis wanting to believe that, in spite of everybody wanting to believe it, in spite of the fact that he puts on a good show and he does certain things that appear that way. He's the guy who saved Hamas, completely screwed up Gaza when Israel's on the verge of ending it. He's the guy who's really bad on Syria and basically supportive of an former ISIS president of Syria. He's the guy who loves Erdogan, who is an Islamist president of Turkey. He's the one who refuses to really go after the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States or anywhere else in the world for that matter. And now there is a story coming out that the United States is in talks with Qatar. You remember the Qataris? To sell them, not just Saudi Arabia and Turkey, but now to sell the Qataris F-35s. So let's arm all of Israel's enemies. Let's arm all the people funding Islamic terrorism around the world. And then you want to call this guy a friend of Israel? Or friend of the West? Or friend of Western civilization? It's, it's hard for me not to take this stuff personally. And when I get angry, I really am angry. Because I know that whether I consider myself, as I said, a Jew or not consider myself a Jew. And by the way, all these attacks that I get on Twitter, all the attacks that I'm seeing in places like Amsterdam and elsewhere, it's not about Israel. It's not about Israel. They don't say Israelis did this, or Israelis are monsters, Israelis are immoral, or Israelis are baby killers. It's all Jews. It's all articulated as Jews. They don't say kill the Israelis. They say kill the Jews. That is the state of the world. And as somebody who is going to be viewed by them as a Jew, it's legitimately scary. Or, I'm not really scared. It's legitimately upsetting. It's legitimately infuriating. It's legitimately, really mind-boggling in terms of just how we've descended into this pit in hell. This is the West. We're in America. That was Australia. And Europe is falling. So, am I a Jew? When it comes to this stuff, yeah. I'll fight them. I'll stand up to them. And when I say I'll fight them, I mean intellectually. I'm not into fistfights. And I don't want to be into. I would lose really badly. Although it's good to spread the rumor that I know Krav Maga and could kill with a single blow. It's good if everybody in the world believed that. But I'm not interested in a fistfight. What I'm interested in, and I'm not interested really in an intellectual fight against them, but I will stand up against them. I will speak out against them. I will educate people against them. I will fight, not for Jews, I will fight for Western civilization, or really for civilization. Maybe the West is finished and all we have to do is fight for civilization. For civilization that views individuals is what matters. That judges individuals, not groups, not clans, not tribes, but individuals. And they need to be stood up to. And those of you who want to join me in standing up to the monsters, I appreciate that, and thank you. You can come over to Twitter and join me in the fight over there, or come to some of my talks all over the world. But we're at a point where it's civilization versus barbarism. It's not even like different intellectual traditions or intellectual points of view. They have no intellectual point of view. They are the barbarians. Our job is not to fight them because they're barbarians, so they cannot deal with the intellectual issues. Our job is to awaken anybody who is still on the side, at least even partially, of civilization. Anybody who still has some respect for reason. Anybody who still believes in America. Anybody who still believes in the ideas of individual rights and individualism. We need to awaken them to the real threat. The barbarians are at the door. And they're not an outside door, it's an inside door, it's internal, because they're here already. The Muslims and their sympathizers, and the anti-Semitics and the collectivists and the religious barbarians. The barbarians are right amongst us. And if we don't fight them, If we don't rally, put it that way, if we don't rally what's left of the good in this country and in the West, we will all suffer the consequences. It's time to fight, guys. Things are just getting worse. They're not getting better. They're just getting worse from this perspective. There will be a segment of the show later on about the good news. But this is, this is a world at the cusp. This is a time to take sides. This is a time to stand up. And this is a time to be heard. In that sense, this is a time to speak up. To speak up for the good, in defense of the good, and in rejection of barbarism. Can you believe that there are people out there who think that the Mossad did the Bondi? And there are people who claim to be objectivists who believe 9/11 was an inside job. I mean, the world is going to hell. And those of us who know better need to wake up. Need to wake up. All right. How do I switch out of that? So there's a Vanity Fair article out that provides details from a interview, conversation that Vanity Fair writer had with Susie Wiles, who is Trump's chief of staff. Wiles ran Trump's campaign. I think she was the first person Trump hired in the new administration. She basically runs the White House for Trump. And it's a long article. It's a detailed article, and it quotes her and cites her extensively. And this is some of the things Susie Wiles supposedly said to Vanity Fair. Now, Wiles, just to be clear, Wiles has written that the article published is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. I wonder if she wrote this. Although there's no all caps, so maybe it actually is her. She says significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. The truth is, the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months than any other president has accomplished in 8 years. And that is due to the unmatched leadership and vision of President Trump, for whom I have been honored to work for a better part of a decade. None of this will stop our relentless pursuit of making America great again. Notice, in nowhere in this statement does she deny the many, many, many quotations that Vanity Fair attributes to her. She's just in context and all this. So let's read what Vanity Fair actually has to say that she said about the Trump administration. And I'm just going to read you off of a list that was made of highlights from the article. Wiles said she has read the Epstein documents, and acknowledged that Trump's name is in them. I don't think anybody's surprised by that. Wiles said she urged Trump not to pardon the most violent January 6 rioters. He ignored her advice. She admitted Trump is looking for retribution. When there's an opportunity, he will go for it. She tried to convince Trump to stop score setting against political enemies after 90 days in office. That effort failed because Trump's desire for retribution never stopped. Wiles directly contradicted Trump's claim about Bill Clinton, stating there is no evidence Clinton ever visited Jeffrey Epstein's private island. She described Trump as having, quote, an alcoholic's personality, unquote. Wiles said her ability to work with him comes from growing up with an alcoholic father, the sportscaster Pat Summerall. On Vice President J.D. Vance, Wiles said he was, quote, being a conspiracy theorist for a decade, and that his conversion from Trump critic to loyalist was political, driven by his Senate ambition rather than principle. She described Elon Musk as an avowed ketamine user, an odd duck whose actions were often not rational and left her aghast. She called Budget Director Russell T. Vought a right-wing absolute zealot. That he is. Wiles defended USAID, which of course was basically almost eviscerated by Doge, saying that, quote, anyone who has paid attention to government knows they do very good work. She said Attorney General Pam Bondi completely whiffed the handling of the Epstein files, explaining, quote, first she gave binders full of nothingness. Then she claimed the witness list or client list was on her desk. There is no client list, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk, unquote. She said the administration needs to look harder at deportations to avoid mistakes, referring to two mothers who were arrested and deported with their children after voluntarily attending routine immigration meetings. Wiles said, quote, I can't understand how you can make that mistake, but somebody did, unquote. She tried unsuccessfully to get Trump to delay major tariffs, citing a huge disagreement among his advisors. Wiles summed up Trump's governing mindset this way. He operates with a belief that there is nothing he can do. Nothing. Zero. Nothing. That is Wiles. Again, she claims it's out of context, although she doesn't deny any of the quotes. Supposedly, she questioned one of the quotes, and the interviewer sent her a recording of the interview, where the quote is exactly what Wiles said. Now, why she would give an interview to Vanity Fair, a not particularly friendly venue to the president, why she would give an extensive interview to them where she is obviously critical of Trump and all of this, why she would let them record it, and supposedly it was on record. Why all this happened, I have no idea. Somebody should come up with a good, juicy conspiracy theory to explain it. But Trump is very unhappy. He hasn't fired her yet. And I don't think he will, because I think he needs her. I think she's the one who kind of keeps order in this crazy, White House. She also said, by the way, in the interview, you just give some more of the examples, that Trump privately believed that Trump's aim in Ukraine go beyond limited territorial concessions, that Trump thinks that Putin ultimately wants control of the entire territory. Trump believes that. And yet, he's pushing the Ukrainians to give Russia what it wants. Here's a little bit more on this issue with Putin. Trump's team was divided on whether Putin's goal, from the article, Putin's goal was anything less than a complete Russian takeover of Ukraine. The experts think that if he could get the rest of Donetsk, then he would be happy. Wiles told me, this is in the article, told me in August. But privately, Trump wasn't buying it. He didn't believe Putin wanted peace. Donald Trump thinks he wants the whole country, Wiles told me. And then that means Donald Trump is happy to give Putin the whole country. In October, I asked Marco Rubio if this was true. And this is Marco Rubio, quote from Marco Rubio. There are offers on the table right now to basically stop this war at its current lines of contact, okay? Which include substantial parts of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea, which they've controlled since 2014. And the Russians continue to turn it down. And so you do start to wonder, well, maybe what this guy wants is the entire country. So they know. They're not fooled. They're just willing to give it to him. They're willing to support Putin. They're willing to grant him the whole of Ukraine. They really, really, really just don't care. They want to get out of Europe, and they're quite happy to hand Europe to Putin. They just, hate. They hate Europe. Europe represents for them the left. They can't stand Zelensky or Ukraine, and Putin for them is the tough guy. He's the good guy at the end of the day. That is Trump. That is Trump. They don't want a fair peace deal. They want Putin. They want to hand Putin victory. And at least Trump does. I think Marco Rubio actually supports Ukraine, but I think Trump, Vance, and the rest of them, they really, really want to help Putin. Or at least they don't want to stand in his way for him to win. That's the latest from the wonders of the Trump administration. Well, it's not the end of it. We've got a couple more stories about this. So, at a press conference, well, not a press conference, an announcement. Trump signed a new executive order. Trump signed a new executive order designating fentanyl, at least the fentanyl, not that's used in your anesthetic when you go into surgery, because fentanyl is used as an anesthetic for surgical procedures. If you get a colonoscopy or endoscopy or anything like that, they use fentanyl. But street fentanyl, Trump has now designated it as a weapon of mass destruction. A weapon of mass destruction. I mean, words mean nothing anymore. Concepts mean nothing anymore. I mean, cars are weapons of mass destruction. Cars kill a lot of people. Cars give, kill a lot more than fentanyl. And I think as a consequence, you have to conclude that cars are a weapon of mass destruction. Guns, knives. And these things make no sense anymore. Why has he designated fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction? You remember we talked the other day about the difference between mustard gas and fentanyl, and the fact is that if mustard gas was being brought into the U.S., yes, bombing the boats would be fine, and absolutely. So, conceptually, making it murky, the difference between drugs and weapons of mass destruction serves their purpose brilliantly. Now they're just defending the homeland against weapons of mass destruction, which means we're at war. But we're not at war. At most, it's a criminal issue. People selling drugs in America. Nobody is forcing people to take drugs. Nobody is forcing people to inject heroin, snort cocaine, take fentanyl, whatever means they take it, smoke marijuana. Now, a true fraud is being committed on some of these people when fentanyl, without their knowledge, is included in the heroin and in the cocaine or in the whatever. I don't know if it's including cocaine, but in heroin. But that's the consequence of having an illegal drug trade. But fentanyl is not a weapon. It's just a drug. Fentanyl is not unleashed on the American people. The American people choose to buy it and inject it and ingest it. Fentanyl, the transportation and the selling of fentanyl is not an act of war. There is nobody we're at war with. So, I mean, this is so irrational. And again, such a desperate attempt to justify their horrific behavior. Pretty pathetic. Talk about pathetic. So there's a man named Heng Guan. Heng Guan. Heng Guan risked his life in China to expose China's Uyghur camps. These are the camps that China has in Western China for the Uyghurs, the Muslim minority that lives in China. Particularly, it's actually a majority in the provinces in West China. So, he risked his life to expose this. He's a dissident within China, and he managed to escape. He manages to escape to the United States and to seek asylum. Here. He actually produced video evidence showing what was going on in these camps and what was going on in China. Anyway, he is now being detained by ICE and is going to be deported. Now, the United States is not quite explicitly brutal enough to literally deport him to China, not directly. I mean, that would be like returning a Soviet dissident back to the Soviet Union. And if he was returned to China, he will die. He will be killed. There's no question about that. So it seems like the United States is going to deport him to Uganda, which has very close economic and military ties with China. So it's almost certain that if he gets deported to Uganda, he will be deported to China. And his blood will be on Donald Trump and on the entire command structure of ICE. I mean, this is just despicable. It's just despicable. But yes, if you're a white Afrikaner, if you're a white South African, if your skin color is white and you don't have slanted eyes, you are welcome in the United States. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can come into the United States and be granted asylum. But you're a freedom fighter in China or in Venezuela or in any country in the world where freedom is dramatically under attack. If you're a freedom fighter, if you're risking your life to criticize your regime for the first time in American history, really, you are not welcome in America. Unless you're white. Then you are. I mean, the racism of the current asylum program is stunning. It's explicit. And again, almost nobody's talking about it, right? The only people right now who are permitted to seek asylum in the United States are white Afrikaners who are being discriminated against. I absolutely being discriminated against by the black majority in South Africa. And if they want asylum, they should be granted asylum. Although I'm not sure why couldn't they just emigrate here under a jobs program. But why are they better in some way, more legitimate than Venezuelans, Cubans, Chinese, or a whole wide range of people fighting against the authoritarian regimes that they live under? Why are the South Africans more legit? Skin color. It's all about skin color. That's what matters to people like Miller. By the way, I mean, the Afrikaners, and again, I don't want to attribute collective guilt, but the Afrikaners, at least Afrikaners of 30 years ago, the Afrikaners of 30 years ago were the people who imposed apartheid on South Africa, which was brutal towards the black majority population. The Afrikaners were the ones that sustained apartheid in Africa, in South Africa, throughout the period of apartheid. And they were the ones who most resisted, most fought against the elimination of apartheid in the early 1990s. So, you know, the two groups of Europeans in South Africa, they are Afrikaners of primarily Dutch descent. And then there are people from British descent, immigrants from Britain, Ireland, Scotland, from generally the UK, who emigrated there and settled. And there are also Jews, and there are other people, but those are the two groups of dominant groups of whites. And generally, again, generally not, there were exceptions to this rule. Generally, the Afrikaners were the ones who supported apartheid and perpetuated it, and the British were the ones who wanted to end it, and often fought on the side of the blacks. My uncle in South Africa actually went to jail in South Africa for siding with the anti-apartheid movement, and was actually banished from South Africa under apartheid, was kicked out of the country, and had to flee to the United Kingdom. Anyway, I mean, really, deporting a Chinese dissident back to China is just so evil. It's just so evil. All right, I got one more. I mean, I've got a few stories here, but I just want to remind you all that the show is supported through listeners and watchers like you. You know, it can't do the show unless we raise kind of a minimal amount of money every show. We have goals, $250 an hour. $250 an hour is the goal here. And we are short of that for the first hour, and we've only got 10 minutes to make up the difference. So if you can make up the difference, if you can support the show, if you'd like to, because you gain value from the show, and you'd like to value back, pay for it in a sense, then please consider supporting the show with a super chat or a sticker. You can do a sticker for a very low amount. A super chat question is great because then you get to shape the content of the show. I will also mention that it's really helpful to the algorithm. If you like the show, and if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Please subscribe. Click the subscribe button, and then you will get notified when I go live, or when I post a short video or anything like that. You will get notified. So please subscribe to the show, like the show, comment, chat, engage. What the algorithm likes is engagement. They want engagement. So please engage. All right. Put all that aside. Let's talk about some good stuff that's happening in the world today, because a lot of good stuff is happening. It's pretty amazing. One of the most heartening trends right now with regard to kind of longevity is the fact that there's a significant decline in the prevalence of dementia. Right now, at each age, the prevalence of dementia is down compared to what it was a decade ago. Today's 90-year-olds have less than half the risk of dementia than a 90-year-old had in 1984. Now, nobody knows exactly why this is happening. One could assume people are living healthier lifestyles, maybe more exercise, maybe people are eating better. There's also significant evidence, but I haven't seen the data in terms of when this happened, that the vaccine against shingles actually reduces the prevalence of dementia significantly. So maybe that's a new vaccine. Maybe more people are getting vaccinated. It's a vaccine that is recommended for anybody over 50. There are no new drugs for dementia. There's no real new drugs. There's no new pharmaceuticals, unfortunately, for dementia. There's still a lot of research being done, but nothing, no cure, nothing like that. It's much more likely that it's something else that people are doing, not to prevent their dementia, but just generally that they are doing. like getting the Zika vaccine, shingles vaccine, or like eating better, or maybe more people are taking a multivitamin. Maybe it turns out a multivitamin is good for them. I mean, who knows? Nobody knows. This is the point. We don't know the cause of it. The speculations, again, have to do with the other speculation, just speculation, that, there's a high correlation between when statins were introduced. Statins, that drug that lowers cholesterol, lowers your LDL. There's a high correlation between when statins were introduced and when this starts being a phenomenon. Statins are widely used today. Many older Americans take statins. And it could very well be that statins are having some impact on dementia that we don't understand or we don't know. It could be less saturated fat in the diet, but it's not clear. It could be more exercise, probably. But it's not clear, but it could be no difference in saturated fat, but more statins, which reduce the LDL, and maybe it turns out that LDL and whatever statins do have an impact on the brain. No one really knows. Some other hypotheses. Big decline in smoking. Right? People today who are reaching 90 are less likely to have smoked in their lives than people who reached 90 10, 20, 30 years ago. GLP-1 is too new to really have an impact. So it's unlikely GLP-1 to have any impact, although certainly they might still have one. So the key is nobody knows. Again, exercise, shingle vaccines. I'm just looking at things that people try to explain it as. Anyway, this is great. This is great news. I mean, you have less than half of a chance of getting dementia today at age 90 than you did in 1984. That's amazing. And we don't even know why. But there's a lot of stuff like that going on. There's a lot of just stuff that's happening in the world out there that's really, really positive. Indeed, we've talked about this. If you look at rates of U.S. deaths by cause per 100,000, deaths by cause per 100,000 over a 12-month period, every single one, homicide, traffic accidents, drug overdose, alcohol, are all seeing declines. Not quite to, historic lows, although homicide is getting close to historic lows, but lower than it was in 2020, 2021, 2022, where deaths from everything related to human behavior rose. We're seeing sharp declines, even in drug overdose, right? Everybody right now is the war on fentanyl, weapon of mass destruction, and yet deaths from fentanyl are declining significantly. They're back to 2019, levels, and if they continue to decline at this rate, we might go back to 2010 levels where they were way below where they are today. A bunch of other things that are interesting happening. Aurora Innovation, a self-driving truck company, is expanding its operations in Texas. In 2026, it plans to launch a fleet of autonomous trucks to haul sand. Sand is used in fracking. I think the biggest manufacturer of sand for fracking in the Permian Basin is called Atlas Sand. And not by accident, Atlas from Atlas Shrugged sand. Anyway, it plans to launch a fleet of autonomous trucks to haul sand used for oil and gas drilling around the Permian Basin. So autonomous cars, which will mean traffic accidents are going to plummet. Trucks are responsible for more deaths and more accidents than ordinary cars. We've got Overview Energy has completed a major engineering milestone where they have successfully beamed energy from a moving aircraft to a ground receiver, with the next step being to build a solar power station in space and beam the electricity down to Earth. I think the Japanese have already done that. Starlink is ever expanding into more and more and more and more countries, providing really, really cheap, high-speed internet on a global scale, pretty much everywhere. And I mean, Starlink is, in most of these countries, most of these third world countries, is significantly cheaper than, land-based ways in which to receive internet. So significant increases in human well-being with exposure to that. Talk about GLP-1s. Eli Lilly has an experimental obesity drug, I think is also a GLP-1, called retatrutide, which is performing better than any of the other drugs. Patients on the highest dose lost nearly 29% of their body weight over 68 weeks. Across all treatment participants, average weight loss was about 24%. So it outperforms all the other GLP-1s that are out there. Oh, somebody asked me if I believe in the moon landing. If you have to ask, we're probably going to have a problem. I believe in reality and facts and what really happened. Yeah, here's the study, as I'm reading this article, here's the study on shingles. A new study strengthens the case that shingles vaccine might lower dementia risk. By using an age-based rollout in Wales as a neutral experiment, scientists found vaccinated elderly people were about 20% less likely to develop dementia over 7 years than those just outside the eligibility cutoff. So amazing. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, from our good friend Milei, the bringer of good news, of our good friend Milei. Argentina poverty rate has fallen to 36% in the third quarter of 2025, which is roughly 9 percentage points lower than the same period last year. At the same time as we've got significantly lower inflation in Argentina. So good things are still happening, even at the political level, Milei, economic level, Milei. And science and technology continues to advance. The Enlightenment isn't just fading and going away. The Enlightenment is continuing to enhance human life. It's not going to just disappear. It's going to fight. It's going to fight the anti-Enlightenment forces that exist out there. Now, it won't fight them explicitly because it doesn't have the philosophy to do it, but it will fight it instead of continuing to produce human progress. So, really, there you go. All right. Let's see. All right. That is the news for December 16th, 2025. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for the super chatters. Don't stop. We're getting close to the target, but we're already into the second hour. So we really should be targeting the second hour target. So, we need more support, value for value, provide content by asking questions. All right, let me close that, move this over here. Let me remind you all of a few things. On December 31st, we'll be having a year in review show. It will start at 1 p.m. East Coast time and go probably until 5:30 p.m. East Coast time. So it will go for 4.5 hours. It will be a major fundraising event, so please consider what you're willing to support the Yaron Brook show with. And please come, even if it's for a 10-minute segment or half an hour, and be prepared to contribute to us achieving the goal. So the max you can do on YouTube with a super chat is $500. So if there's anybody out there who would like to contribute more than $500, I know they have been in the past, then you can go to PayPal and make the contribution, kind of a one-time gift on PayPal to the Yaron Brook show, and just write in the notes that this is for the New Year's Eve show. And I will count that towards our goal for the evening, which is yet to be determined, but is going to be, somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000. So I'm going to need all the help I can get to that. I'm going to need all of you guys to show up. If you want to make 2026 even bigger and better than 2025 was in terms of shows, if we can have more of these, then show up and let's break all the kind of fundraising records. I want to remind you that the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor. They are reminding everybody that Ayn Rand Institute, ARI Live, is offering new courses starting in January that you can take. You can take them live in person and interact with the teacher, or you can take them after the fact, online. You can do homework or you don't, whatever you want. You get exposed. These courses are taught by some of the best teachers in objectivism right now, and I'll be teaching a course. So check it out. Go to aynrand.org/start here, aynrand.org/start here. Click on the link, check out ARI Live, and see if there are any courses that interest you and you'd like to sign up. If you do sign up, you can get a discount, but by the fact that you're a Yaron Brook Show listener, you get the discount by typing in 26YBS10. That's a discount code, 26YBS10. Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the show. Alex is the leading voice on environmentalism, climate change, and is incredibly knowledgeable, articulate. He writes a blog post, a Substack, alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. You'll learn so much from him. You'll become much more knowledgeable, but also a better communicator. He has this thing called talking points, energy talking points, where he really gives you the tools to debunk and to challenge kind of the environmentalist talking points you'll probably hear over Christmas dinner from your family members. Now he will provide you the appropriate response. Shows us sponsored by Michael Williams of defendersofcapitalism.com, defendersofcapitalism.com. Michael and I have worked on Defenders of Capitalism for many years. Michael runs a program for leadership program of the Rockies where he basically is teaching capitalism, its efficacy and its morality, and from every different aspect. Check out defendersofcapitalism.com. And finally, Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with two T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. If you're interested in a product that can save you a lot of tax money, a lot on taxes, capital gains taxes, then check it out. Check out the interview I did with Robert Hendershot on the playlist on my YouTube channel, the playlist for sponsors. You can find my interview with Robert Hendershot. I think you'll find it interesting. So please check it out. And if it's interesting, go to hendershotwealth.com/YBS and sign up. Also, I will be at a conference in Florida, a conference, to celebrate Ayn Rand's birthday. So it'll be the last weekend in January and early February. I'll be there. Harry Binswanger, Peter Schwartz, Ellen Canna, Gene Maroney, Don Watkins, Shoshana Milgram. Great cast. It's a small conference. You get a lot of time to hang out with the speakers. It's incredibly friendly and pleasant. It's also Florida in late January. I'm sure you want to escape from wherever you are, where it's cold. The weather there is perfect. basically perfection. So join us. You can check it out at Rands, with an S at the end, Rand with an S, randsday.com. Just randsday.com. And then from there, if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll find a link to the conference web page where you can sign up. Finally, let me just note that tomorrow, I don't know when the show will be. If there might not be a show tomorrow. I'm giving a talk tomorrow during the day, and I'm not sure when I'll be back. So there might not be a show tomorrow. I'm just preparing you for that. Definitely a show on Thursday. Definitely a show Friday. We'll be back to kind of normal times. Not sure about Saturday and Sunday, but definitely Thursday and Friday there will be shows. And finally, just a reminder to do stickers. It's a way to support the show without asking a question. And go, please. One gift that you can make to me year-end is go to patreon.com and sign up as a monthly supporter of the Yaron Brook Show. If you're already a monthly supporter, then consider increasing your contribution before the end of the year so that in 2026, we're even larger and even more significant than we have been. So thank you guys. All right, let's jump in with our super chat. Quite a few $20 questions have come in. We're basically at our first hour goal, but we still have to, get into that second hour goal in a more significant way. All right, David asks, did your kids have a bar mitzvah? Well, given everything that I said about Judaism, about not considering myself a Jew, about not raising my kids to be Jewish, the answer to that is no. It was never on the table. It was never considered. My wife and I never even thought of the possibility of giving them of doing a bar mitzvah. My kids, I don't think I've ever been to synagogue. Maybe for a wedding, somebody's wedding, but they've never been to synagogue qua synagogue. So absolutely no. There was no bar mitzvah. David also asks, is there much anti-Semitism in Puerto Rico? So I think there is, but none that I've directly observed. What I will say that when I first moved here, there was an article in the local newspaper. This is 2018. This is the island's trying to recover from Maria. And there was an article in the newspaper, op-ed, basically blaming the Jews and Jewish money for keeping Puerto Rico poor and not allowing it to recover from Maria. So, and it was published in the major newspaper here. So that was kind of shocking and surprising. There were a few pro-Hamas, anti-Israel demonstrations during the war in Gaza, but not much, nothing significant. So overall, I'd say it's here on the island in certain places, but nothing that I've really noticed firsthand. I mean, David says that he lives in Costa Rica. He says, there's a lot of anti-Semitism here, but it's all very low-key, mostly Catholic ideology. I mean, Puerto Rico's Catholic as well. So Catholic ideology is strong here, and I think it's the same kind of low-key. And there is, among the more intellectuals, a kind of, the Jews kind of control finance, they control the world, they don't like us. That kind of attitude, I think, really does exist. Okay, David says, is it possible that the U.S. is moving towards a new alliance structure in the Middle East that doesn't include Israel? Look, it certainly looks that way, or at least it is creating an option for them to exclude Israel. And I don't think Trump will do it. I think Trump generally, and it's going to be difficult for any Republican to do it because there is a segment of the Republican Party that is very pro-Israel. The kind of evangelical Christians that are pro-Israel, that Tucker is constantly attacking. So it's possible they're at least creating a situation where that becomes easier for them to do. And if somebody like J.D. Vance gets elected, then who knows? I think all bets are off the table because I don't think J.D. Vance is pro-Israel at all. I think he would turn against Israel on a dime. I think he's pro-Qatar, like, he follows his mentor, Tucker Carlson. Now, on the other hand, Marco Rubio is pro-Israel. There are others, so there would be this contest within the GOP. I'm not sure who wins out, but I think this administration is basically playing it so that they can go either way. They can go any way they want in the future. David says, thank you, David. These are all same David questions. Assuming Russia is an enemy of the U.S., are Vance and his acolytes traitors? Well, if you really define Russia as an enemy, then supporting the enemy, appraising the enemy, advocating the enemy's case is treason. In that sense, it's treasonous. I don't think you'd get anybody in the United States to advocate for that because nobody in the U.S. wants to declare Russia an enemy, partially because they're cowards and partially because they have nukes. And partially because they don't believe they're the enemy, they believe they're a friend, fundamentally. David says, I would vote for Marco Rubio. I would not. Now, it depends what the option is. But I would not, primarily because he sold himself to the devil, which suggests to me he will do anything. He will sell himself to anybody. He will advocate for anything. So I don't think anybody who's serving in this administration deserves to be president. I think there are better candidates out there. But yeah, I can see circumstances where I'd vote for him where I would never vote for J.D. Vance. David again, is there any reason beyond hatred of non-whites for accepting Afrikaner immigrants? The claim is they're the same culture as ours. They're the same culture as white Southerners of the 1950s who strongly believed in Jim Crow laws. If that's what you want to import into the United States. I mean, is there any, I have no doubt that many Afrikaners, not all, many Afrikaners would want to reinstate apartheid if they could. So, the only argument is they're culturally more attuned to us because they're white and they're originally European. But no, there is no other reason. There's no other reason. The claim is there's a genocide against whites in South Africa. There is no genocide against whites in South Africa. Not to say there's no violence against whites in South Africa. There is. Not to say there's no, the government there is not anti-whites. They are. But there's no genocide. I mean, you start emptying the concept of terms. Now, I actually have an incentive to know this. I still have family in South Africa. I'm trying to figure out who I have. I have an uncle and an aunt. No, sorry, 2 uncles and 2 aunts. Both my father's brothers still live in South Africa with their wives. As a consequence, I have several first cousins in South Africa. And then beyond that, I have a variety of second and third cousins and all kinds of relatives from different sides of my mother's family and my father's family. Both my parents were born in South Africa. I have been in South Africa. I was in South Africa as a child, and I was in South Africa twice as an adult during apartheid. I know what apartheid is. That's why I can tell you Israel, there's no apartheid in Israel, because I actually know what apartheid is. I've witnessed it. I've experienced it. I've seen it. And I've also lived in Israel or experienced it and seen it. So I can tell you exactly. But, so no, there's no white genocide going on in South Africa. But that's the claim. They're saving these people from genocide. I find myself arguing with people about things that not to boast, but reality, I actually have firsthand experience with. I've actually lived through. I've actually been to places, I've been to a lot of places in the world. And they have usually not left the town that they were born in. Some of them have not left their mother's basement. They basically have gone nowhere, seen nothing, experienced nothing, know nothing. They don't know history. They really don't know stuff. But they have certainty because they saw a YouTube video. They have certainty because their friend told them something. They have certainly because Tucker Carlson mentioned it in a podcast. It's stunning to me. Stunning to me. All right. Newly Dan. I just read from the missing link about the anti-conceptual who go by memorizing rules of behavior rather than think of principles. Yes. Friends say, I must tip 20% for meals. How would you make this from a rule to a principle? Well, I don't think it's a rule or principle. I mean, some people take it as I don't think it's a principle. Principle has to be an abstraction. That is a concrete. It's a concrete kind of rule of behavior. If you take it as a rule, I don't take it as a rule. I take it as a suggestion that sometimes I embrace and sometimes I don't. Like my waiter in the restaurant I'm going to tonight, because it's just before Christmas, is going to get, well, maybe not tonight because I'm going again, but is going to get a much bigger tip than 20%. You know, he's my regular waiter at this restaurant all year round. He's incredibly friendly and knowledgeable, and we get amazing service, and they go out of their way to treat us well. I mean, they're going to get a good tip. You know, other waiters, will get less if the service sucks. And 20% seems to be, given that waiters in America get low wages because tips are expected, 20% seems to be a reasonable amount, given where the wages are. But you get to decide. You tip what you want. It's not a rule. It's not a principle. I mean, some people view it as a rule, but it's not a rule. You can tip less. You can tip a lot more. You can do what you want. Principle is something abstract. I'm going to be honest. That's a principle. Thomas, happy Beethoven birthday. Actually, probably his baptism day, but who cares? What's your favorite recording of the 7th? Oh, God. Well, first, I'll say that on Saturday, to celebrate Beethoven's birthday, my wife and I went to see the Puerto Rican Symphony Orchestra perform Beethoven's 5th. And you might say, yeah, Puerto Rican Symphony Orchestra. They were good. And they had this young conductor from, I guess he conducts an orchestra in Long Beach. He's Italian. And he was fantastic. First of all, because I'd heard the 5th a few weeks ago in Austin, and the performance was okay. It was good, but it was okay. This performance blew me out of the water. It was excellent. It had the kind of tempo that I think the 5th deserves. Fast. It was a Toscanini, for those of you who know who he was, tempo. It had the power, the thrust, the drama that Beethoven deserves. And it was just, and the orchestra was great, right? This is Puerto Rico, and yet the orchestra is very good. And it excelled, I thought, with Beethoven's 5th. So it was amazing. Really enjoyed it. So yeah, go listen to some Beethoven. Thank you for reminding me today is his birthday. I forgot. My favorite recording of the 7th. Well, I mean, you know me. I pretty much, particularly for Beethoven, Toscanini is my favorite performances of pretty much all the Beethoven symphonies. I love his 7th. Again, it has that Toscanini tempo. It's much faster than how most people do Beethoven, which I think fits in my understanding and my emotional response to Beethoven. So I love his. I guess it's NBC, but he did a number of 7th. I think there's also a 7th with one of the British orchestras. but I can't remember. But the problem with Toscanini is there's also a New York Philharmonic. That's right. There's a New York Philharmonic, performance of the Seventh. That's when he was at his peak. Problem with all the Toscanini performances is, of course, that the recordings just suck. I mean, the recordings are old. The acoustics are not very good. You can enjoy the music if you know the piece really well. The New York Philharmonic, Thomas tells us, is 1936. That's right. He was in peak. He peaked really in the 1930s and early 1940s, but the recording, of course, technology was very poor. My famous modern seventh, but it's also the same record has the fifth on it. It's not that modern, but it's modern era. It's at least was recorded stereo. Is Carlos Kleiber. Carlos Kleiber, and is it the Berlin Philharmonic or the Vienna Philharmonic? Wiener Philharmonic, I forget. The Kleiber performance, Vienna, is just, I think it's magnificent. It's one of the best records I know. The sound quality is fantastic. His pacing is fantastic. The power, what he brings out of that audience, it's like a Central European orchestra. So they've got those string sections down. They know how to do it, right? And that's my favorite, of the modern recordings, other than the Toscanini. That would be my favorite recording. It's and the fifth there is fantastic. Although I should listen to the Carlos Kleiber fifth again now that I've just heard the Puerto Rican Philharmonic, just because I was so excited by it. Just to kind of, for objectivity's sake, just to reorient me, one of the greatest conductors, one of the greatest symphonies, one of the greatest orchestras ever, versus the Puerto Rican Philharmonic. But I'd like to see actually the difference. But that would be. I'm curious what yours is, Thomas. What is your? I don't know. What's your favorite symphony of Beethoven's, and what's your favorite recording? So I'm throwing the question back to Thomas Schubadam, who is a conductor of classical music and opera and ballet. He's conducting the Nutcracker. He's a conductor. So I'm curious. He knows music. So I'm curious what your favorite Beethoven is and what your favorite performance is. All right, I'm watching the chat to get that. Is this? Oh, okay. Eroica, and yes, Sell with Cleveland. Yeah. We agree on that. I mean, Sell in Cleveland, again, all of his Beethovens are phenomenal. That generation of conductors were just truly amazing. And the Cleveland Orchestra was a phenomenal orchestra in those days. So yes, so he's a Beethoven third guy. I'm a Beethoven 7 guy. Where do you stand? All right, Mirko. Mirko is nominated for the Modena Citizen of 2025, which is pretty amazing, right? Cool, but racing against politically correct people, fighting more and more, promoting reason and reality here. Thanks for helping, my friend. Oh, well, thank you, Mirko, and keep up the fight. It's fantastic. By the way, those of you who don't listen to classical music, you should start. You should just start. And Beethoven's not a bad place to start. You should start. Beethoven's 3rd, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 9th. Not to mention violin concerto, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, piano concertos, and everything in between, and all the chamber music and everything. I mean, just stunning. The emotional content, the emotional experience you will have from listening to that music is unlike anything. And certainly, you cannot get that from anything in modern music. I don't care. I don't care what. Thomas says he could go on for hours. I know he could. I don't care. Who you like in popular music, or rock or heavy rock or metal or whatever, nothing comes close to the experience that you can get if you truly immerse yourself in it, from classical music in particular, my favorite, which is Beethoven. Okay, and how can you say Christianity is a bigger threat than Islam? Oh God, I keep getting this question over and over and over and over again. But don't want restrictions on Christian immigration from Central South America. Because Christianity is an intellectual threat. Christianity is going to have to make its argument. It is not yet at the point, Christianity, where it is going to use force against me. When it is, and if the people coming in from South and Latin America are militant Christians, then yeah, I want to stop them. Muslims want to use force now. And therefore, they need to be stopped now. And one of the things I've said over and over again is that it appears in the West right now that the only thing that's going to stop the Muslims from using force is the Christians using even more force. But that's not the Central and South American Christians. I'm talking about the Germans and maybe the French, who knows, but certainly the Germans and other Central Europeans and maybe Northern Europeans. But, there's no threat. In the United States, the threat of Christianity is an intellectual threat. Then still not at the point where they are pulling out guns. And I think the Christians coming in from Central and South America are the least of our problems. It's the heritage Americans who are the threat, who are dangerous. Cook says Detroit basketball. Did Detroit beat the Celtics yesterday? Is that why I'm seeing this? If they did, that's too bad. All right, Michael, I'm seeing a lot of conservatives turning on Trump over his disgusting tweet about Reiner's death. Yes, but it will be temporary. They'll be back. They'll be back in line, praising everything Trump does within hours, if not within days. Or within days, if not within hours, I should say. Michael, what is the distinction between rationality and objectivity? I mean, there's a sense in which they're capturing something very similar. That is, they're capturing the role of the mind in comprehending reality, the relationship between human consciousness and metaphysical existence out there. Objectivity is the method by which one is rational. That is, it captures I think that's the right formulation, but anyway, it captures the relationship between, the use of the mind in order to capture reality. But they're describing a similar phenomena from a different perspective and answering a different question, right? Objectivity tells us that that what we observe is the consciousness acting. It's not passive. Consciousness acting on the evidence provided by our senses of what's in reality itself. Rationality is much broader. Rationality is also how we deal with abstractions and do abstractions from abstractions. Rationality is all the mental processes which we engage in. Being objective, that is making sure one is only accepting facts, not emotion, opinion, unsubstantiated opinion, feelings, intuition, whatever. That you're not being subjective, and that an objectivity recognizes that the fact that you cannot be passive. Reality doesn't just imprint itself on you. Subjectivity, recognize that you have to be active in discovering the truth, and that it has to be focused on the facts, on reality. And that's all part of rationality, but rationality is a lot more than that. Good question for a philosopher when they come to the show. Michael, hate speech laws increase Islamist terrorism by shutting down discourse. They are used against you. Yeah, I mean, hate speech laws are primarily used in Europe to silence people criticizing Islam. That's their primary use today. So they're used against me. Totally not Scott. Ooh, I like that handle. I like that handle. Is it a good time for coalition building? Maybe it is, Scott. Now I'm suspicious. With whom? With whom? Who would we form a coalition? And for what? Right? Ayn Rand said you're going to form a coalition. It has to be for something relatively narrow. Who would we form a coalition with and for what purpose? You know, we can form a coalition with a bunch of economists around tariffs. We can form a coalition with a bunch of, I don't know, Jewish organizations and pro-Israel people around Israel. We can form a coalition of anti-Trump ideas with the anti-Trumpists, never Trumpists. But who else? What? There is no broad coalition because there's nothing. You can, maybe we can form a coalition with somebody like Steven Pinker around advocacy for reason and rationality. But what else? What do you guys think? Do you think totally not Scott is indeed Scott? This is going to be a big mystery now. A really big mystery. Like number 61, does Trump want to give more than Putin's asking? No, Trump doesn't want anything. Trump wants the fighting to stop and for him to be able to take credit for it. He doesn't care one way or the other. Trump is willing to give Putin what he's asking with the full knowledge that longer term, that means more war. That means Putin trying to take much more. That is, Trump is quite willing to give Putin what he wants in order to get some short-term peace and quiet. Maybe Trump will cut a deal with Putin. I'll give you what you want, just don't start another war until I'm out of office, and then we can blame whoever the new president is. I think that's a completely reasonable thing to believe that Trump is actually doing. I don't consider that a conspiracy. I consider that quite legit. Zia Race, in his naivete or his fun, is saying it can't be Scott. It says totally not Scott. That's right, and Scott would never lie. Michael, what does the Republican Party look like after the fall of MAGA? Will they take a Milei approach? No, there's nobody in the Republican Party with a Milei attitude, with a Milei point of view, with a Milei perspective. So I don't know what it's going to look like, but one thing is for sure, it will not be a Milei approach. There's just nobody even close to leadership with that kind of attitude, that kind of perspective. Lincoln, if GLP-1 pill is approved, it could be the greatest improvement in human health in years. Not being overweight adds a decade to lifespan. Yes, but it turns out that GLP-1 is not only good for weight loss, it's independent of the weight loss or controlling for weight loss. It's actually good for things like diabetes and heart disease above and beyond the weight loss benefits. So yes, GLP-1 has the potential to really dramatically improve lifespan and the quality of life and the length of life dramatically. It's very exciting, and when you don't have to do an injection, that'll make a huge difference. It'll become much more popular, much more available. Jennifer says, there's a video of a group playing Ninth Symphony in the street. People stopped to listen and threw open their windows. It was somewhere in Europe. Yeah, videos like that. I've seen videos like that, not of the Ninth, but other ones. They're always fun, and it's great to see people's response and the look on their face and everything else. It's fantastic. Raphael, YouTube 2025 recap says I'm in your top 0.1% with 522 videos watched from your channel. God, You watched 522 of my videos this year. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, you guys all should let me know what your rank is in terms of watching videos from my channel. But that's pretty amazing. I wonder how many of you are in the 0.1%. That would be interesting. And you have to do, God, 522 videos. That's a lot. That's almost 2 a day. Jennifer watches all the live ones, but this can't be all the live ones. This must include shorts and all kinds of other videos and lectures. Yeah. You can check on YouTube, on your profile, you can check your 2025 roundup. Lincoln, given your relative poverty when you had kids in your youth, is it rational to have kids in your 20s, even if you had money or you are not mature enough? Well, I mean, it depends, right? Some people are mature enough and some people are not. We had kids in our late 20s. We thought we were mature enough. I think we were. So we had them. Money was not a consideration. We knew we would survive one way or the other. Again, we were poor and we were fine. I mean, the biggest expense when my kids were born, my first child was born, biggest monthly expense, because we kept track of every dollar we spent in those days. We still do. It's a habit that I haven't shaken. The biggest monthly expense we had was diapers. That was the biggest monthly expense we had. So that was, I think, more than rent and we when first son was born, we lived in a horrible apartment. Then after a year, we moved to a nicer apartment. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was hard. We managed fine. But yeah, you have to make the evaluation of whether you're mature enough yourself. But I don't think money, I mean, depends on how you are used to living and what you expect. You know, if you go out to restaurants a lot and you like to travel and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, maybe you shouldn't have kids in your 20s. But we were hunkered down in Austin, Texas. We didn't go anywhere. We didn't go out to eat. Going to a concert was a big deal. You know, we did very rarely went to concerts. Yeah, we just stayed home and you know, we managed with kids. That's why all this complaining about people not having money and stuff, it does, you know, and poor Generation Z, and I look at how I lived and I look at how they lived, and give me a break. Give me a break. Hunter, I was active duty military for a while and left a couple of years ago. I've considered rejoining the reserves in a few years, but I'm feeling uneasy about it given our foreign policy thoughts. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely feel uneasy about joining the military given foreign policy. I mean, given the morons, and I'm being generous, the immoral morons who run our foreign policy and run our Department of War, and you know, you're at the, you know, when you go into the military, you basically have to follow orders. And the orders are being given by people that I wouldn't take a job with. I wouldn't want to be their employees. I wouldn't want to hang out with them at a restaurant. I wouldn't want to have anything to do with them. Why would I want to give them control over my life to the extent that they have it, which is very large, in the military? So yeah, I completely understand the unease. On the one hand, you want to fight for your country, and the country's still worth fighting for. On the other hand, God, the people in command are so anti-human. Mirko, and tomorrow unveiling the impossible plane, an aircraft flyable using only the feet. Marvelous engineering, the first in history. Oh, exciting. It'll be fun. Flying only with the feet. I can't even imagine. You're wearing shoes or not? I can't even imagine how that works. You should send me a photo. I'm curious. Or a video, even better. Lincoln says, restaurant recommendation, Walter's Bistro in Salt Lake City. Volters with a V. Bistro in Salt Lake City. Thank you, Lincoln. Moonrock. Do you think Ben Shapiro is a sellout, coward, or maybe attempting to steer the irrationality of Trumpism to something at least more sane? I think he's a coward. I think he's a coward. I think he knows exactly how bad Trump is, but he knows, or he knew, that if he went against Trump, he would lose his whole financial base, the whole base, and he rationalizes it, right? He rationalizes it as, I'm doing more good, I'm steering, I'm providing a backstop or whatever. You know, I'm sure there are lots of rationalization going on why it's okay what he's doing, but I think ultimately he's a coward. Soupy doopy. Member of my family, quote, I agree that communism destroys man's life, but whether that destruction is good or bad is just opinion. What is wrong with this? Can one engage with it? If so, how? Well, ask him what good or bad mean. What does good or bad mean? And you cannot have good or bad without asking the question, good for whom? And for what? And what does it even mean to say there's good that communism provides? For whom? For the imaginary proletarian? But it's not clear they have any good either. Good for, yeah, I mean, who's it good for? And try to move in the direction of, isn't good or bad that which is good is good for human life? That is the for whom it's for human life. That is, it's the for what is for life, good for life and human life. And if you try to move in that direction and see that, and once you see that, then it's obvious communism is evil and bad. Whether you can engage with that or not really depends on him and how he responds to that question. Hockey one. Yaron, how do we fix the Libertarian Party USA? The GOP is turning post-liberal. DNC is socialist garbage. LP has no political skill. What? LP's problem is not political skill. LP's problem is an absolute, thoroughly, systematically unimprovable political philosophy or political ideology. The Libertarian Party is inherently corrupt. It's been corrupt since its founding. It's not an issue of political skill. It's an issue of awful ideas, anti-American ideas, anti-freedom ideas, from anarchy to hatred of America in world affairs, to things like hatred of Israel because it's an actual functioning state. It's a cesspool of the worst kind of people. So the only way to fix anything is to abandon. The Libertarian Party needs to be put under the axe. It needs to be eliminated. It needs to be closed down, shut down, and the keys thrown away. And somebody needs to start from scratch with good ideas, with a proper philosophy, even if it's just political philosophy, with a political philosophy. And it needs to explicitly exclude the anti-liberty, anti-freedom anarchists. For that, you need a completely new political party with completely new leadership and completely new attitude, completely new perspective. The existing Libertarian Party needs to be done away with. Done away with completely. Yeah, can't stand the Libertarian Party and the people involved in it. Just horrible, always has been, since it was founded by, horrible Murray Rothbard. So it's not better than the GOP or DNC. It's worse than the GOP or DNC. There's no political party worse in America than the Libertarian Party because it gives such a bad name to capitalism. And anarchy is worse than socialism. And anarchy is certainly worse than the mixed economy. I'll take the mixed economy over anarchy any day. So my perspective is no. Libertarian Party is really, really, really bad. And the third worldism is, do you want America to be third world? That's what they want ultimately. That's what they want to create ultimately. I'd rather have a mixed economy. I'd rather live with what we have. All right, guys, that is it for today, Tuesday, December 16th. I will see you maybe tomorrow, certainly on Thursday and Friday. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.